next 52 minutes is Lew Rockwell of LewRockwell.com. Of course, he's worked for many years with Ron Paul's organization, formerly in Congress. He's the head of the Ludwig von Mises Institute. He's the chairman of it. And he joins us for the next 52 minutes to cover the March of Tyranny, to talk about Ron Paul, Rand Paul. We're going to get his take on the TSA, on the warrantless federal checkpoints taking blood, the threat fusion centers, all of it with Lew Rockwell today. But Lew, first off, great to have you here as we prepare to close out 2010. What do you think's most important on your radar screen?
Well, Alex, I think we've got a very exciting year ahead, both in a good sense and in a bad sense. No question that the sort of tyranny that you and I have been fighting against for so long and have worried about its approach is coming very fast now. I mean, the police state, the erection of the police state is very frightening. The wars that they're running, the concentration camps that they have, the torture that they engage in, the fact that we've had two presidents in a row that now have said if they determine that you're a bad guy, they can secretly arrest you, kidnap you, of course, is what's happening, take you to a secret prison, secretly torture you, secretly kill you, or just secretly keep you there for the rest of your life. So, you know, if I mean, that sounds more to me like Brezhnev than it does like what's supposed to be an American president. So we have a very alarming thing, and then of course we have what they're doing to the economy. We have what Bernanke and the rest of the gang at the Federal Reserve, in conjunction with the big banks, is doing to vastly expand the money supply. They're destroying the dollar. They're setting us up for another bubble and then another greater crash. And by the way, this current bubble is not going to feel like prosperity to any real person, just to the big banks and the big Wall Street firms and the government itself, of course. So we have what they're doing economically. We have the police state. We have the wars that they're running. And there's never been a government as big as the U.S. government in the history of the world. I mean, this is the biggest, most powerful, richest government ever to exist. It has untrammeled powers like no other government. They can, and part of that is the reason they can just print the money that they expect to want to spend. They have these gigantic counterfeiting presses that we call the Federal Reserve. But I think these are all reasons why the thing is actually going down, because they're going to destroy the dollar. They're going to destroy the government economically, the Treasury, the Fed, and all the rest of them. Therefore, they're not going to be able to keep up the empire with its 700 gigantic military bases all over the world. They're going to be forced, I think and hope, to bring the troops home and to really cut back in the government. Of course, they're going to be screaming about this. They're going to be warning us that, oh, the terrorists are going to get us, and, you know, all the rest of their mythical cries. But I believe, and I don't know when it's going to happen. It could happen this next year. Might be 5 years from now, might be 10 years from now. But I think within the lifetime of virtually everybody listening to this show today, that we are going to see the U.S. government forced to get back, not to a constitutional level probably, but significantly cut, significantly less powerful. That'll be good for us. It'll be good for the world. It'll be something to cheer about.
I agree with you, but I clearly, and I've even read this in some of the public white papers from CFR, Rand Corporation, and others, that the military-industrial complex is basically planning to continue to fund themselves out of a type of third-world casino gulag model, and that it'll be good for the rest of the world that the Colossus is going to implode. But here domestically, if we don't expose them for their crimes and reverse what they've done, all of these imperial forces that are torturing and drug dealing and kidnapping and all the rest of it are going to be back here concentrated. So whereas the vampires have been spread all over the world, supping on 1 million Iraqis, you know, murdering people in Serbia, Georgia, you name it, now all the vampires are going to come back here, and it's going to be scary.
Well, and of course, as the great classical liberals and libertarians have always held, you can't have an empire overseas and a limited government at home. You either have, if you have an imperial government overseas, it's imperial at home too, and it treats the American people like peons. So we shouldn't be treated like peons. People in other countries shouldn't be treated like peons. And the exact process that you're talking about, of course, we saw it with the CIA, which very early became a major drug dealer. probably in the 1940s. Certainly by the time of the Vietnam War, the CIA then, and still is, maybe the major drug dealer in the world. This, of course, is one of the reasons for the Afghan War. The U.S. is in league with the so-called Northern League, who were the pro-communist drug lords in Afghanistan. So this stuff is still continuing, and it gives the CIA, which of course is spying on us here at home, even though it's illegal for them to do so, it gives them power and money. So, you know, this is a many-faceted gem of evil that we face, and you're exactly right. We have to educate people as to what's going on, sound the alarm, and I believe that if the American people actually withdraw their consent from this operation in Washington, it can't actually succeed. We saw a little bit of that with the TSA. You mentioned you, of course, were heroic against the TSA. This is, I think, an extremely important issue, and we actually saw them push back a little bit because of all the popular opposition around the time of Thanksgiving and since then. So, of course, they're going to start up all the porno scanners, the dangerous radiation scanners, all the horrific feel-ups and so forth that are designed not to find a terrorist, but to humiliate us, to make us feel like cattle, so they can show us that they can do anything to us and nothing can happen to them. So all those kinds of procedures, they're going to try to start them up again. That's why we have to start up our anti-TSA campaign again, to go after these people, to alert Americans. This is just pure. I don't think there's ever been anything. I don't think even Hitler or Stalin did this stuff. I mean, it's quite an astounding and humiliating and disgusting business they're doing in the airports, and they can be beaten. They can be pushed back. We saw it again the end of last year, and I think it's going to be a very important thing again this year.
Lew Rockwell is our guest, the chairman of the Lew von Mises Institute. I want to get into the economy. I want to get more into the TSA and this control grid that clearly is training us to have government get in our comfort zones, to teach us that we're the terrorist. I saw Ridge announce 8 years ago, right as Homeland Security was getting cabinet position, in a 2-hour C-SPAN piece, and I've been warning people ever since, that they would be on the streets, they would be at checkpoints, you'll have to have an ID card to have a job, an internal passport. They now admit that indeed this is what they're doing, but you literally stole my thunder there, Lew. My next point was dealing with Nazi Germany. Even Hitler, and I've studied it deeply, and even Stalin, Mao, they didn't put on paper that they were secretly torturing people for confessions. They didn't put on paper that they could torture children in front of their parents, like John Yoo and Alberto Gonzalez and others. They didn't put on paper that they were involved in narcotics trafficking. Now Fox News comes out with Geraldo Rivera, and the troops admit, yes, we help them grow the opium. It's being, produced at record levels. I mean, is this just hubris, or I believe, from studying them, it's more of a psychological warfare op where they're trying to, because we've exposed them, just bring it all out in the open and inoculate us to psychologically to accept anything and everything. I mean, first it's, oh, you don't like us body scanning you? Now we'll grope you. Now we'll do both. Now we'll put our hands in your pants. I mean, they literally go in the pants and squeeze the underwear and squeeze the genitals. What do you think? I mean, is it just power mad, or is there something more to it?
Well, I think it's, first of all, they enjoy it. There's something about the kinds. F.A. Hayek, the great Austrian economist, had a chapter in his book, The Road to Serfdom, called "Why the Worst Rise to the Top," and he was talking about government. In general, the kinds of conduct that don't get you anywhere in a business rise you right to the top in government, whether it's successful lying, demagoguery, being power mad. So these people, they love it. They love taking an innocent person and putting their boot on the neck and pushing your face in the mud. I mean, they actually like that. This is not, of course, just the American criminals. It's criminals in governments all over the world.
To briefly interrupt, it's from 1984. O'Brien's torturing Winston, and he says, you want to know the future, Winston? It's a boot stomping on a human face forever.
Well, that's what they want, and they not only want it in order to maintain power, in order to enrich themselves, but they also want it because they like it.
Yes.
They like doing it, and so you can see it in the eyes. There's a wonderful many novels written about this sort of thing. Of course, Orwell was so great, but there's something about the eyes of these people. When I was a boy, the cops were I thought, at least in the middle-class town I lived in, pretty much decent guys. But today, the cops are not decent guys. For the most part, there are some, but they go after the damaged guys from Iraq and from Afghanistan, and they put them in there, and they treat them and train them to think of us as the people who they're occupying. They really are, whether Malcolm X was right at the time or not, he'd be right today. The cops are an occupying force.
Well, I want to say it exactly. You had some big cities with corrupt, predatory police forces. You can see the photos and old newsreels, and those corrupt cops with the predatory eyes look like a lot of the cops today. But even back when I was young, I mean, cops, and a lot of old cops I know, they were really into being real tough guys. They were into protecting people, and they liked people bringing them pie and coffee and knowing the locals, and really did hate criminals and did enjoy, defending the republic on average. Now they are automatons who are on power trips more and more, and it's just, and you can see the tyranny. I mean, not just the actions, your instinct when you see a crazed cop. As a man, I literally get my hackles up and I go, that's an enemy. That's somebody who isn't, who. Well, let's talk about when we come back, the points I just made, elaborating on what Lew just said, and how we somehow reverse this, the full federalization of police and more. We'll get into what Lew thinks is going to happen with the economy, how the empire will unravel, what we can do. LewRockwell.com is just an amazing website. I'm Alex Jones. We'll be right back.
Cyrus Jones from 1810 to 1913 made his great-grandchildren believe you could live to 103.
It's very simple. When you militarize the police, the military's trained to kill people and break things, to fight a foreign enemy. And decades ago, the police would deny they were being federalized. They would deny that they were being militarized. Now they call themselves paramilitary organizations. Lew, you got cut off by the break. Continue with your point.
Well, you're to follow up on your point just now. I remember when Richard Nixon, evil Nixon, and the Republican Party started the open militarization and federalization of local police forces with the Law Enforcement Assistance Administration, as they called it, back in the 1970s. And it's been a steady increase today, so that, the local cops are adjuncts of the federal government, and they all look like soldiers. I mean, is there anybody listening to this show who, when they see a cop car or a cop, think, oh, thank God, I'm going to be protected? I mean, none of us think that. And even in the little town I live in, the cops look like something out of Star Wars. I mean, they're all wearing body armor, and they have, all kinds of advanced weapons in the trunk of their police car. And it's very alarming. I mean, they clearly are becoming an occupation force. But there's one thing I want to bring up. One optimistic point. There was a man called Étienne de la Boétie, who was a French thinker in the 16th century. Murray Rothbard writes about him and makes the same point. David Hume, Ludwig von Mises, others. The government can depend on the consent of the governed. Even totalitarian governments depend at least on the tacit consent, because if we remember what happened in Romania when the people had finally had enough of Ceausescu and his people, didn't matter that they had the army, didn't matter that they had the secret police, they went down because the number of victims of the government is far vaster than the number of people living off the government.
And no amount of propaganda could stop that from happening. And Ceausescu, hours before he was overthrown, was up there bossing them around at a rally, but cops started beating people up, and the people just finally said, that's it, we're done, it's over. And Ceausescu, of course, was tried and executed within just a day or so of that. And again, a lot of police, and I want to be positive about this, despite all the brainwashing and the fact that they've tried to train the police that the public is their enemy, a lot of police are starting to see through this as well and realize what's happening.